Good afternoon. I am Lovely Grace F. Sampaga from Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English. So, our topic for today is all about the Chapter 14, Radio and Television. Radio and television broadcasts are now a part of an individual's continuing development that listening to radio and viewing telecasts today have become a common fare, a daily diversion that has evolved into drill act. The language and style of speech in radio and television, therefore, have great influence on the audience's oral speech conduct. So it is both interesting and useful to look into this area of speech communication. Broadcasting in radio is carried out by transmitting sounds, music, or speech through the air from the source to the electronic sets of listeners. Telecasting is carried out in the same manner by transmitting sounds accompanied by images through the air to the television sets of viewers. An elaborate network of electronic systems is involved in this complex communication situation. The following discussions will deal with the oral aspects of broadcast communication. And since radio and televisions are agents of speech communication, this chapter will focus on radio and television speech. The preceding chapters deal with the awareness and understanding of the process of oral communication, development of accurate pronunciation and clear enunciation, utilizations of ways of developing skills in the use of the voice, description and participation in the dyadic, small group, and parliamentary acts of communication, steps in speech preparation and speech delivery and oral interpretation. The process of broadcast speech communication. In an earlier discussion of process of communication in dyadic, a small group, and a public speaking situation, the sender of source, the message, the channel, the medium, and the receiver compose the factor of communication. The same elements are present in the broadcast speech communication. Some unique features, however, make up the source, the message, and the receiver, all of which influence broadcast speech. First is the source. Several individuals compose the source of the sender of the message in the radio and television. In a TV format, with only one person speaking, several persons behind the scenes work together to make the speaker's presentation successful and complete. Even before the telecaster utters the first word, the technicians have already provided set lights, background, camera, and sound levels. Fashion consultant and makeup artists have helped the speakers so that she can have a pleasing image on screen. And as the telecast begins, an announcer, unseen announcer, sets the climate for the speaking situation. The speakers begins, assisted by an assortment of electronics technicians. The success of the failure of the speaker, therefore, is the result of the unifying efforts of all these individuals. Second, the message. A variety of message forms are available in radio and TV. Music, drama, discussions, news programs of various types, interviews, debated, and commercial of plugs. The message may be affected, distorted, or enhanced by time, censorship, and the advertisers. Time. Because of the very strict time allotment set in broadcast. A 30-minute or a 1-hour program or special programs that may run for 3 hours to 4, or even a telethon which may run longer. The message affects both the speaker and the receiver. Censorship. Control in broadcast media in the form of laws, government actions, economic pressure, to name a few, limit the value of the message. Advertisers, since the economic structure of broadcast media is mainly based on money derived from advertising, advertising influenced the message received by the audience to large extent. There are relatively almost no restrictions on sponsors except government laws. Thus, the sponsors control their own message. Number 3, the medium. Radio and TV waves, the medium in broadcast speech, make the message travel at great speed to any destination around the globe, thus speeding up man's awareness of events and the acquisition of knowledge. Number 4, the receiver. The receiver in broadcast speech is less structured than ordinary audiences. It may be even unstructured. In the first place, it is not visible. It cuts across the embers of the population of none of them. Normally, however, broadcasters assume that they have a large audience. Some unique features of broadcast are the following. The first one, the broadcast audience exercise control over the listening situation. They assuming that there is an audience for a particular program and that they are many, cannot be forced to watch or listen. Second, they listen for a variety of reasons: to be entertained, to keep abreast of the news, or to acquire information with which to interrelate with others. The third one and the last one is they are entirely unstructured professionals, non-professionals, educated, uneducated, cultured, non-cultured, living in enclaves of rich or in shanty towns. The differences are endless. Number 5, broadcast media and speech. Since radio and television broadcasts are generally in Filipino, the study of speech in local broadcast media seems out of place. However, the principles of speech in mass media aircuts need looking into by radio and television speakers, the language or dialects used notwithstanding. To begin with, the broadcast media speaker must be aware of the basic difference between radio and television. The first entirely oral, while the second is both oral and visual. In radio, the listener only hears the words spoken. In television, the listener not only hears the words spoken but also sees the speaker. The radio broadcast, music, and other sounds enhance the ideas presented. The radio listeners is regaled with appropriate sound effects to show verisimilitude, the ticking of the clock to indicate the passage of time, the sound of a door opening and closing, the sound of traffic in a busy intersection, and so on. In television, the addition of camera results in even more realism. It can show flames in burning building or a group of policemen trying to kill rowdy demonstrators. Basically, however, the words of radio and television broadcasters can be the same. The speakers has to be aware of certain aspects of speech in the broadcast media. In radio, speech has to be spontaneous as in newscast. It requires no preparation and material can be secured by phone or in person. Meaning is received by ear. Since television is bimodal, meaning is received not only by ear but by eyes as well. Thus, the message is supplemented by gestures and facial expressions, aside from the physical environment of the event. Both radio and television broadcasts have immediate effects. There is no delay. Instruction, response, and feedback can make the speaker adjust his remarks during delivery. Broadcast speech leaves no record and permits giving information and exchanging ideas informally or off the record. Considered remarks, errors in grammar, and idiom, and the kind have to be religiously avoided, especially in radio broadcast. These are avoided in television broadcast, which are usually taped and are therefore edited before delivery. It is important for broadcast media speakers to realize this, since immediate feedbacks can be expelled even in unrecorded remarks. Despite the difference in radio and television, the word used in reporting event can be the same. The timbre of the voice heard over the radio, supplemented by facial expressions and gestures when seen on television, can project the effect aimed at. Number 6. Radio and television broadcast. Mass communication in the broadcast media is very much a part of our daily lives. Radio broadcasts reach every nook and corner of the archipelago. Even the most remote groups can hear radio programs with the aid of transistor radios. Television broadcasts, although not on the round-the-clock basis, as in radio, and although they are beamed mainly to urban areas, are followed avidly by millions in the metropolitan areas in Manila, Cebu, Iloilo, and other urban centers. With sophisticated receivers, listeners can even receive programs from abroad. Most broadcast media's fare today are news reports, variety, disc jockey, quiz shows, interviews, and radio and television dramas. News programs suit radio and television's best, especially in competition with print media. The latter comes out once a day, twice at most, while radio reports can be in 24-hour basis. The broadcast media have indeed reduced the world into a global village. Number 7. News programs. News programs are the most common fare in radio and TV today. Their advantage being in their timeliness. The most common types of news programs are: the first one is Spot News Report. This is a short report of an event inserted in regularly scheduled programs. They last, at most, only a few minutes depending on their immediacy. Second, the News Summary. This is an objective report of news on straight report basis without an editorial comment or analysis. It is given at a regularly scheduled time. Next, the News Commentary. The meaning of or implications of a news event is discussed, analyzed, and interpreted by a knowledgeable commentator from a particular point of view. There is no report on a news event. Next, the News Roundup. This type of news program reviews the most significant news event of the week and is broadcast during the weekend. Next, the Special Event News. This is usually a remote coverage of a very significant event, political, historical, or the like, where the listeners and viewer interest is high. The last one is the Sportcast. This is very popular radio and television fare in our sport-conscious country. Seasoned and knowledgeable broadcasters give play-by-play accounts and commentaries on basketballs, tennis, and the kind. Other types of programs in the broadcast media are interviews, discussion programs, debates, and dramas. These programs are usually taped or filmed. Number 8. Radio and TV scripts. The neophyte broadcasters will realize that he has to read his lines. The only exception to this is the spot news report, which has to be handled by experienced broadcasters. The radio script is basically different from a TV script. In radio, the message is written out in an outline form from which the broadcaster bases his talk. As he goes on, the air develops the main topics and completes the various details, filling up the major and minor items. The outline requires that the radio broadcaster has an easy, flowing and spontaneous speaking style that is always factual as set in his outline. The TV script, on the other hand, contains the complete message written down in a narrative manuscript that has to be read and followed strictly, especially in studio broadcasts. In television scripts have to be carefully edited and re-edited. The time has gone when participants go before a TV camera without scripts. Even veteran broadcasters commit bloopers, even in grammar. Today, the broadcaster from the president of Malacanang to the actress reading Lady Macbeth or a cabinet man giving a speech has to use a teleprompter or a telecue, a device which is attached in from a camera just above the lens that he reads as he speaks. The writing of a script, especially in television, is therefore the least of your worries as a broadcaster. They are written by men and women in radio and television stations who are trained especially for the script writing corps. Your job as a broadcaster is to do justice to the script, realizing that everything in television is rewritten in several times. Although script writing is not strictly required of a broadcaster, you may want to develop and write your own manuscript as your broadcast job catches on. Here are a few pointers. The first one is useful techniques in writing. Address the entire script to wide variety of audience. Keep in mind the diversity of individuals that compose your listeners. Give it a broad appeal. Use an emphatic and attention-getting initial statement so that you can interest your listeners to stay on to your channel or station. Make your script simple. Express ideas in a direct, concrete, tense, and vivid manner, putting a little element of suspense where needed. Make all main points stand out. Choose sequence signals properly and use transitions effectively. Develop the transcript into an informal conversational style as if addressing two person or a small group rather than a larger audience. Make your sentences clear and reasonably short without going a choppy construction. For radio, 20 words per sentence is the limit. Plan the script to fit time limit. Although there is no prescribed rate for radio speaking, 150 words per minute is relatively normal. Use this as your guide in beginning until you are able to time your script accordingly. Limit consonants with hissing sounds such as S and Z, for the microphone tends to magnify these sounds. Use simple words, avoid technical expressions as much as possible, and to help easy audience reception and recall, organize your script into an orderly A, B, C logical method to avoid confusion. Second, drafting and manuscript. Write the script yourself, giving the entire piece unity, coherence, and emphasis. Read the finished unit or portion aloud several times and rewrite those sentences that sound affected or forced. Keep improving the script until the entire piece sounds spontaneous and natural. Type the script on a standard bond paper with double spacing between lines in readiness for microphone reading. Make portions that can be cut, like bracket and sentences or paragraphs, in the event so that you can run over time. At the end of your script, include material that can be added or cut as the actual speaking time allows. This makes it possible to time the script. The third one is writing scripts of plays. The writer of script of plays for radio and television has to be a creative artist. He has to be familiar with the elements of drama and ways of theater, and must be able to write and invent situations. He should know how to develop a dramatic idea with all its complexities to a logical conclusion. Like all other kinds of drama, a radio or television play has to have a good idea for a story. It should have conflict. The writer has to be able to manipulate his idea into a form which will have meaning and appeal to all kinds of audiences. As you prepare a script, you should remember that those who will listen to it on the radio or see it on television will be people just like you. Your play has to be about human beings in human situations with whom your audience can empathize. If they cannot do so, you can expect them to switch to other radio station or other television channel. Number 9. Broadcasting in English. The language problem is a vexing one for the beginning broadcaster. His schooling having been in English. He will find that he has to learn to broadcast in national language. This is because radio and TV programs are, with certain exceptions, in Filipino. The term Filipino may not even suffice here, since the broadcasters generally use Tagalog, to the consternation of audiences in Cebu, Iloilo, Davao, not to mention the clannish Ilocanos. Even if you are adept in Tagalog, you have to contend with Taglish, a mongrel language. Even seasoned Tagalistas commit this error when stuck for lack of Tagalog terms to use. This dilemma becomes formidable when the broadcasters finds that there is not a Tagalog term for a certain foreign word. Number 10. Articulation and pronunciation. In radio and television, accurate pronunciation and correct articulation of sounds enhance the acceptability of your speech and heighten your credibility as a speaker. Errors in these areas should not be underestimated because the expectations of your audience are relatively high. When speaker cannot pronounce a particular sound and uses a more convenient sound for it or omits the needed sound altogether, he commits an error in articulation. For example, the speaker who cannot produce letter H says a bit in place of habit. However, when a speaker can produce a particular sound but pronounces it differently, he makes an error in pronunciation by saying father instead of father. These pronouncing disabilities may be minimized by reviewing the lessons in voice and dictions. In order to give a better broadcasting or speech, you need to understand what goes on during the process of communication, especially in giving a public speech. Without a speaker, there is no process. The speaker is simply the person who is delivering or presenting the speech. A speaker might be someone who is training employees in your workplace. Our professor is another example of a public speaker as she or he gives a lecture. Even a stand-up comedian can be considered as a public speaker.